You know, I think it's got something to do with this camera. I didn't have this problem until this camera's plugged in. Just before this stream started, I tested this. Sorry, I'm whacking my finger at you. I tested this. Audio was working, because I know it sometimes stops working. Go live, and it stops working. Dear, so I have been talking, and thank you, Just Jessup, for letting me know, because I didn't take a look at the microphone input to see that it wasn't moving. That's annoying, but thank you for letting me know. So hopefully I can clear my throat, but it's a bit, can't quite at the moment. We shall see how that goes. Well, one of these days hopefully I can afford another Logitech at some point, and when I do, hopefully that won't have this problem, because I'm fairly convinced it's this camera. It doesn't always disconnect at the end of a stream, and one or two other things. So I think it's somehow affecting the USB in some ways. That's stopping the microphone transferring sound. So what I was saying, and those of you who were able to lip read, and I was actually in the view of the camera at the time, I was just talking about this background. And all I was really saying was, on some backgrounds you want a textured background, and therefore it doesn't need to be smooth, and therefore they're quite often a bit easier to do, depending on the texture that you're after. But generally speaking, they're easier to do. You don't have to have anything regular about it. Indeed, usually with a textured background, you want it as irregular as possible. But in this particular case, I'm kind of representing a sky, and so I really want the sky to be smooth. Even with clouds in it, you don't really get rough sky. Now, I guess if I was trying to do something like like a sunset with different reds and oranges in there, which obviously I can't do directly on the wood, or I can't carve orange. No, I can't carve orange. Then what I could do is use some sort of texturing pattern to represent it, and that would probably be a regularish sort of pattern, a bit like cross hatching, and then a different one for the different colours, etc. But in this particular case, nice blue sky, clear sky, no clouds, smooth background. So just honing, polishing this blade. Because in some cases I do need it to be fairly sharp, because some areas of this wood are very spongy and they don't cut very well under pressure. But the sharper the blade, of course, the better that is, or at least the easier it is. It's not necessarily perfect, but it's the best I can do. Right, I need my big square blade as well. So just get that out, which I forgot to get ready. Whilst I remember, and I don't quite, I do remember why, Came across a new streamer last night. Seemed to have just started streaming. Unfortunately, although I followed him, I can't remember his name, so I'd have to look him up. But he was making sort of like woodwind instruments. He was actually making flutes out of bamboo. But not the sort of regular concert type flutes, but things like North American flutes and Andes flutes, which work in a slightly different way. And I was watching him make them last night. That was absolutely fascinating. So that's definitely worth. If anybody you're watching me carve, but if anybody enjoys watching people do physical things like that. That's definitely a guy to look out for. Whilst I was thinking about it, let's see if I can find his name, because I was definitely fascinated by the way in which they make the flute, cut the holes, make the sound generator, and then basically tune the whole instrument. And he was playing it as he sort of went along, as it's part of his tuning, and it was some really interesting tones. Now then, if I go to my own channel or my own profile, I think I can get a list of followers. It's not followers, it's following. Here we go. He's called Scaleborn. So. In fact, also whilst I remember, let me do that. There you go. That should make it a bit easier for you to find him. Blimey, he's already got he's got 8 followers. Most of those even just one night last night. Unfortunately, just Jessup, he's broadcast or was broadcasting last night after I finished, so and he was still going at midnight. I think he's in America, and I think he's about 5-6 hours behind UK time. So unfortunately, there's quite a few, like Pucky Ranger, American glassblower, and don't very often get to see him. Either he's broadcasting whilst I'm at work, or he's broadcasting when I go to bed. And there's quite a few interesting American broadcasters that are like that as well. We just miss out on the time zones. You've seen it? Oh, Scaleboard. Oh, was that when did you see him? I got the impression he'd only just started streaming, and doing quite well considering the setup that he seems to have. An analog camera into a capture card into WinTV, being captured by OBS and then broadcast. That's somewhat of a convoluted video path, is that? But he was explaining quite well what he was doing as he went along, and I found that fascinating. Not that I'm going to try another craft. Not yet. Well, no, probably not at all. Might do something like that just as a one-off, just to try. But there's no way on earth I'd be wanting to do more than one of them, I don't think. The only problem is, whilst I and yeah, I was about to say, well, whilst I could tell when he had something on pitch, I wouldn't actually be able to tell if it was the right pitch. sort of a bit weird like that. I can tell when something's off key, but I couldn't tell you what it should be, if you see what I mean. So I wouldn't be able to tune one. And I did notice he appeared to be using a tuning gauge, electronic tuning gauge, but then of course the thought just crossed my mind, you can get applications that do that on your PC, so it might be possible. But anyway, it was a fascinating thing to watch. Burning holes in. No, not him. Oh, Poke Ranger. Okay, yeah. As in Pokemon. I think it's Poke Ranger. Which may or may not have anything to do with Pokemon, but yeah, the glass blower. Now that is something that has always fascinated me. Again, it's not one I'm about to try, to be honest. It takes a fair bit of training, and I really do not have the location to set up a propane torch with oxygen and everything else. But I certainly remember as kids, as a kid, if I was anywhere near a shop where a glass, type shop where there was somebody actually doing that sort of thing, glass sculpting, I would quite happily stand and watch them for hours on end. And even as an adult, I'd be quite happy to do so. I can remember the first time going to Disneyland, whichever one's in Florida. In the marketplace, the village marketplace, there was a shop there that was where there was a glass artist in residence, shall we say, and my wife quite often wanted me to move on if we got anywhere near the place. The skill of the people that do it just fascinates me, and just what they can make out of it. I was on a stream this afternoon, this morning actually. Who was it? What's his name? I watch quite a few streamers, and I've got half the time I cannot remember the name. Steve-O something or other. Let me have a look at Steve's. Steve tends to broadcast ETS2 and Farming Simulator and some combat games like Titanfall and things like that. And where is he? I'm looking in the wrong place. Oh yeah, I'm looking in the right place. Followers, where is Steve-O? There we go. 76 2002. Steve-O 76 2002. Whilst I'm talking about streamers tonight, that's this guy. I've consistently watched him for quite a long time since he has been streaming, and I got interested in watching him because he was, or had been, shall we say, in the army, because he was in the army, a class 1 HGV driver. So he was driving the sort of things you get in Euro Truck Simulator, and I just I got fascinated watching him, obviously, to see how a professional does it, so to speak. And I've watched him on and off ever since. A bit difficult to watch him these days because I'm either at work or I'm streaming myself. But it surprised me this morning when I was talking to him, because he'd no idea that creative even existed, which surprised me a little bit. I thought people were somewhat more knowledgeable about it now, he was kind of aware of music, but not creative. But he may drop in, because now he is aware of creative, and I get the impression it's something he'd quite like watching, especially when he's at work. Ah dear, this bit of wood does not want to come out. Come on. So this area just around and underneath this wing here is a little bit high in relation to the rest of the background. So what I'm endeavouring to do, from an angle where I can't see it, because I'm trying to make it easier for you guys to see, is just lower the background and tidy up underneath here. Ultimately I'm going to have to spin this round and take a look at it for myself, but because even with the camera I can't see what I'm doing. But unfortunately the angles in here, again, it's one of those things that's one of the hard things that's made this piece one of the more challenging things to carve, is all the restricted angles. So, you know, being able to get into, like underneath here, underneath the wing panel, has proved an interesting challenge, shall we say. Some of which, as I mentioned before, I could have alleviated by thinking about it more before I started. So things like this tail, if I'd done it the other side, would have saved me a lot of grief. I didn't, but you know, I've learned something for next time. Not sure I'll carve another dragon. Maybe next time if I carve another dragon I'll actually carve it in full 3D, which could be interesting. Never done that either. In fact, I've never yet completed carving a whole piece in full 3D. I've started, but I've not finished. And of course, since most of the time is on stream, you never know, you might get to see me finish that. No, you won't. The subject matter means that I probably won't do it on stream. But so I might have to think of something else to carve on stream. Maybe we'll get one of our resident models back in and might carve one of those. Actually, for the first time today, Junior, since we got back from holiday, Junior has actually come in and sat on my knee today. Whether he'll actually come into the studio tonight, I don't know. Of course, if he does and he sits behind the monitor, I know what you want. You guys will want me to turn this camera around and point at the pussycat, but that's all right. Got an area of very messy wood just underneath here, just under the head, which I'm trying to persuade it doesn't want to be there. That's you, so that must be the V. What? What, Just Jessup? What's the what to what you're referring? Or are you busy playing Train Simulator? I think you guessed it. I guessed it. I guess what? Have I got a 30-second lag again? And I'm totally losing the plot. I bet I'm on your second monitor and you're playing Train Simulator again, aren't you? I'm just using a very small V-shaped tool because I can use the edge of it very much like a flat chisel, to just try and get right into this corner here, just right under the head and neck. Whilst I haven't dug the material down quite enough yet, I want to sort of, you know, do some work in this area to I'm not left with a bigger job to do, shall we say. I don't know if it's a thought of maybe finishing this, but I feel somewhat more lively tonight. You're downstairs watching TV. Okay. So are you watching me on a tablet or phone, or actually, I'm assuming, or are you actually watching me on the TV? So have you got some sort of media system connected up, or something like that TV device? Was it the Google Chrome or something like that? I've got one of those around here somewhere. I must actually get around to connecting that to my TV. There again, I don't watch TV that often. I'm usually up here doing something with the PC, so I really won't be watching TV even if I connected it up. iPad. Okay. Yeah, the iPad app's not so bad. That's what I watch stuff on during the day when I'm at work. And you end up being limited to just watching one thing at once though with an iPad. On the PC I quite often have 3 or 4 streams running at the same time, but on the iPad, no. Well, it's not even possible, I don't think. So I suppose you could use a browser and watch a dual stream or something like that. Keep swapping tools here. That's not going too bad. Now I am taking great care with this because I am driving this towards me and I am using quite a bit of force. I am thinking about the options, but that's principally why if you can see it, and well, you can't see it, but I'm just using one finger to drive the chisel. Even though that takes quite a bit of effort and control to do, I do not want to push this chisel too hard. That's about as far as I can get in there with that, and I have to switch chisels again. So again, if you've not seen me do this before, you'll see me quite often just feeling the wood. It tells me quite a lot about it in terms of where there's bumps and divots and in this particular case whether or not I've actually got it reasonably level, because I can feel the thickness of the wood change, and it is reasonably level. At one point it was quite pronounced hill coming up here. That's now gone away, so all I'm just going to do is tidy up around there and see if we can keep a nice smooth surface. This area around here is quite bumpy, but we'll kind of leave that until we've worked our way around. So what I'm trying to do now, just at this very edge here, is just remove all the debris, little bits of lifted wood that haven't quite detached themselves, but do it without leaving a significant tooling mark. Generally speaking, whilst it's acceptable to see tooling marks in handmade stuff, and indeed quite often people expect to see them, otherwise they think it's not handmade. To be honest, the sort of tooling marks are things like smooth tooling marks, as you might get with a gouge, sort of cuts and things like that in the board. That's not really the sort of thing people mean when they want to see tooling marks. Even though most people actually wouldn't know what it is that they did want to see. You know, they'd say things to you like, oh, I want to see the chisel marks, and of course cuts and things are part of the chisel mark, but then they'll say, oh no, that looks untidy, or it doesn't look like you've done it right. And that's when you find interesting ways of describing people. I think actually I wasn't originally going to do it, but I'm going to apply a small, well, I'm going to try and apply a small undercut just on the dragon's neck, just around here. It'll have to be small because I can't actually get in there. The muzzle of the dragon's head is too much in the way. I wasn't originally going to do this, but I'm sort of looking at it and I'm expecting almost to see the edge of the dragon's neck, you know. It looks too thick otherwise. So it's not a particularly onerous job to just put a little bit of an undercut in there. An onerous job, it's just a time-consuming one. It is quite hard when you're carving like this. You're carving into an acute angle, so I'm carving sort of from the handle towards the tip in there. I'll show you on the big camera. So I've got an acute angle like that, a very sharp angle, and I'm trying to carve material away from the bottom. But it's actually quite hard to get an exact match between carving down there and carving down there, and getting them to meet at the point. And it's the point, of course, where the two bits of wood come together. If you can cut that point away, then the bit of wood comes out. If you don't get that far, then it doesn't. And that can actually be quite take a bit of doing sometimes. And the more restricted the space you've got to do it in, of course, the harder that is. Can I get enough? I can just about get in there with this. I have to be careful not to damage the wing. I can just get into the corner with this V-shaped gouge. and that should just be enough of an undercut. It is. So what I've just been able to do is just apply a little tiny undercut. You just see the edge of it if you look at it, so it kind of looks like the neck's rounded off. Let's see. Yeah, so I've got some tooling marks certainly around the bottom of the... Actually, I've got some scratches just here on the bottom of the head. Actually, I think it's that way. Yep. I've obviously caught the bottom of the jaw when I've been trying to get some other carving areas around here done. So I've got some sort of cuts in there. I'm just going to, I won't say file, but shave off some very slim slivers of wood. That's a bit of a mouthful. Right, I can't go too far with that, even though I don't want those slivers to, those marks to be there, because I'll change the shape of the head. And I no longer have any spare wood around it to recarve if I make a big problem. So we will be leaving it as it is there. So what have we got here? Good evening, Graya. Good. Thank you for dropping into the studio this evening. Thank you for that. I do know that there's a couple of other streamers that do broadcast carving, although I haven't seen either of them carve for a long time. One of them is a guy. Well, he gets called CJ. His Twitch name is something like CJOS, CJost, something or other. I'm not quite sure. Generally speaking, though, he sculpts with oil-based clay. And there is another guy, but unfortunately, I haven't seen him for a while, and I really can't remember his name. But I don't carve all the time either. Chip carving. Chip carving is an interesting one. Graya, thank you very much for following the studio. I do appreciate you doing that. Thank you very much. It's always nice to know people like what you're doing, and you know, a fellow carver as well. That's great. Yeah, it's a pity that you can't stream it. I certainly would like to watch it. I watched a few on YouTube, chip carving, and it's quite interesting what you guys can do. I'm not a fantastic. In carving terms, I'm not fantastically interested in doing chip carving myself, but I do find what you guys do really interesting, the patterns and the geometric shapes that you get from doing it. It's just not my style, really. But I kind of love watching any of that being done, so it is really a pity that you don't or can't. Whilst I have a couple of knives there for image carving rather than chip carving. I might have a go one of these days just to see. I mean, you never know, it might turn out I actually love doing it, which wouldn't have well, it kind of wouldn't surprise me, but because, you know, it's carving and I like carving. But I do other things, by the way, so if you followed me just to watch carving, you won't see it every night, because I do other things as well, like pyrography, for example. So still on the wood theme, but heating it and making pictures on it, which is actually probably what we'll be doing after this dragon is complete. I also do, what else do I do? Scraper board, punchcraft. I make jewellery as well. Technically it's chainmail jewellery, but generally speaking, I've certainly really quickly found that if you say chainmail, everybody thinks you mean armour, and that does not look like armour to me. That's just an example I happen to have on the desk in front of me of a bracelet that was made. Yeah, oh, yeah, and I think, yeah, you know, here in creative you find that a lot. We're all, you know, it's not, there's no one craft is better than another or anything like that. It's, you know, they're all fascinating things to see. But I don't know about it being challenging or not being challenging, to be honest. It looks quite difficult to me to carve smooth chips in, especially the ones I've seen have sort of done a chip in one cut or two cuts, I guess, and that looks like a really heavy duty use of a knife, and I don't use that much pressure when I'm carving, so I kind of you know, somebody who can control a knife enough to take those sorts of cuts out of even out of basswood, you know, you're doing well. So, you know, it's not, I wouldn't say there's anything not challenging about it. It's like everything else. It's if you've developed the skill, it's relatively easy. I mean, I would kind of go, well, relief carving isn't that hard. Chip carving, on the other hand, would be something that I wouldn't be very good at. So do you have any pictures of the work that you've done, Graya? If you've got any available publicly and you want to would like to show us a link to them, that would be acceptable. I'm just trying to smooth out an area just in here. There's a bit too many tooling marks, but I really can't get in with many tools. And of course, the ideal carve direction is actually the opposite to the only way I can get in here, and so. Because I'm carving backwards against the grain, it's like rubbing hair up the wrong way. It stands out, does the grain, and I'm getting a sort of a white looking area of wood. So what I'm going to try and do is something I don't normally do, but is to just scrape with the grain. Trying to smooth down the grain a little bit. It's not great because I then I still get a rough area from the scraping, but that's not too bad. So now is I've got tooling marks around here where the waste wood was before I carved the head, so I've now got to reduce the background here down below that tooling mark. Trying really hard. Just the way in which this is going, it's trying to twist the chisel under my hand, causing it to dig in, and I don't want that to happen. So I'm having to hold it fairly closely, or under tight control, shall we say. That's what I mean when I say closely. That cut is quite a bit deeper than it looks. pt34 guy, good evening. Welcome to the stream. Are you playing games tonight? Don't you normally stream playing games, or are you just having a chill night playing them by yourself? Or are you streaming and watching and playing? For those of you that don't know, pt34 guy there is also a fellow streamer, well worth checking out. During weekdays in the afternoons he broadcasts making chainmail jewellery, a bit like the article I showed you a moment ago, but better. He does more variety of different things. He's making a credit, well, it's not a credit card, but a bus pass holder at the moment, on commission. So that's an interesting thing to watch. And if you can't catch him during the day, you can watch him on a Wednesday night. He usually streams on a Wednesday night doing chainmail. But other nights when he streams, he's playing games. What are you playing tonight, Eddie? I know Eddie does do things like ETS2 and Train Simulator, but he does other stuff as well. And I still can't get rid of that tooling mark. If anybody's wondering why I don't sand it, I'm avoiding sanding. I try not to sand. For a couple of reasons. One is everything looks kind of bland then when you do that. If you're sand everything, you lose all the tooling marks and everything else, and that adds a little bit to it. It might as well. If you lose them all, then you kind of almost could have just gone and bought this in a press, or it's been factory routed or something like that, and it's not. It loses some of its charm, shall we say? But mainly because when you sand wood, what this wood will do is it will sort of go slightly milky coloured surface is the best way I can describe it. It sort of goes dull. When I'm carving this, and like this area I'm carving now, the wood, especially if I get in the right direction, the wood is really shiny and smooth, and it reflects the light in a different way, and it actually sort of looks a lot better. And I couldn't actually get this smoother surface if I tried sanding it. Oh wow, that's I couldn't get this shinier surface. I'd end up having to polish the wood, and I quite enjoy leaving a lot of these things natural wood. It does mean that they discolour slightly over time as the wood sort of oxidizes on its surface, but that's part of the wood object. It's part of having a wood thing. I say I can preserve it if necessary, and if I was going to preserve it, then I probably would give it a light sanding, just because over a few hours areas like I've done here will oxidise, and they'll be slightly different colours, and of course once you coat it in some sort of varnish or lacquer, those colour differences are kind of enhanced and it looks a bit odd. So I'd probably do a quick overall sand with sandpaper, just to give us an overall similar colour. Are you playing Prison Architect tonight? I've watched that played a few times. Sort of interesting, but not enough for me to go out and buy it. But that's just me. It looks an interesting and quite a nice game when I've seen it played. What was I going to say? About sanding this, varnishing it. I can't remember what I was going to say. I was going to say something about it, but never mind. Right, switch chisels. Oh no, don't worry about the paragraph. Explaining exactly what you meant. Yeah, it's that's kind of well, I'm almost tempted to say that's how quite a lot of the creative streamers got into it. I used to watch a streamer called Artillery 72, I think, 82, who JB Drawing is his business name, and he quite often would draw Minecraft stuff, and I used to watch him in Minecraft because I quite like Minecraft. I used to watch a couple of streamers in there occasionally, but I'd watch Artillery if he started streaming, because I'm an artist. I enjoy watching another artist work, learn something as well because he's a very good artist. And one day I noticed on his stream, you know, he puts your section on the stream title, like I'm broadcasting in creative. And I saw creative, and what's this creative thing? Don't click the link, and was really surprised to find all these streamers doing art and crafts and physical art, this sort of thing. And that night, I didn't watch another stream out. In fact, I don't think I've really watched another stream outside creative since then. And that was probably 2 or 3 months ago now. Now, it's a bit disingenuous to say I haven't really watched another one. I have watched. I have a couple. There's Steve-O, who I watch while I'm at work. I mentioned earlier, who does some streaming. He's not a creative streamer. He's a game streamer, but he streams ETS2 and Minecraft and Farming Simulator, as well as some combat type games. And I watch Matt Pendleton, who is a train simulator. He works for Dovetail Games, but he streams Train Simulator actually after I finish, which is quite convenient. He starts in about half an hour, but they're about the only ones. It was watching them that prompted me to actually, in fact, a guy called 3D Bloke, who is an airbrush artist, who was streaming. I caught him on my first night, and I do airbrushing as well, not on stream, but I do airbrushing. And of course, fascinated by that, watching another airbrush artist at work, and you're learning something. And that's it was 3D blog that basically inspired me to go, well, I like carving and all this, I'll do some of this on stream. And I started from that. I'm still going. Yeah. And it's the thing I noticed for me is I probably did about 3 pieces a year, art wise. Kind of after work, go home, sit down, watch streams on Twitch or watch YouTube, and never quite got round to doing it unless I really felt inspired to something. Twitch broadcasting, of course, means I've got to do something. Well, I don't have to, but you know what I mean. I've got to do something every single stream. I've done more art in 2 months, about 2 months now, than I've done in about the past 3 years. Yeah. Oh, I think all those creative streamers think the same thing, but I'm not sure Twitch or the other streamers do. I mean, creative is a little quiet at the moment, relatively speaking. I mean, it's not well known, despite how much we'd love it to be and love Twitch to. Twitch could do a bit more promoting. It only needs to put a creative streamer, I guess, on the front page. Because creative is quite a large section, relatively speaking, compared to sort of a game which has maybe got 1 streamer in it. But so it's relatively popular, but it's still sort of you're still looking at only hundreds of viewers, as opposed to one of the big top streamers is thousands of viewers, and but it's coming along, and I think the nice thing about it is it's got a nice community. And most of the streamers, we talk about each other, as you've heard me doing. And I know I've been on other streams where they've talked about me and not even known I'm there. So it's something that happens. We kind of promote each other. We sort of watch each other, and I think the people who watch creative streamers, generally speaking, are also kind of more interested in hanging around. They're not looking necessarily for the big bang or somebody to fall over. I mean, yeah, okay, I'm sure they'll all enjoy. If I was suddenly to slice the head off of this dragon, they'd all really enjoy it. I wouldn't, but you know what, we kind of all sort of occasionally like watching a car crash, I suppose. Yeah, no, it's I find creative has been really, really good to broadcasting. We don't tend to get too many trolls and things like that, so life is quite nice, and there's nice people around to chat to. Sorry, I'm just laughing because the thought suddenly just crossed my mind there. I was listening to a streamer this afternoon whilst I was at work, who was as we kind of all do. We kind of all started not really interested, not fantastically. I'll rephrase what I'm about to say. We're not there chasing thousands of viewers. We're not trying to immediately become partners or anything like that. And sort of quite a few people are not even interested in things like partnership or stuff like that. And I was just thinking that you can, shall we say, from my own experience as well. I'm not a fan. Well, I'm not averse to partnership, for example. But there again, I'm not about to try and do everything I possibly can, promote myself on every single channel going and really annoy people, shall we say, to get it. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But it just struck me as being funny because the language that people use, I find to be fascinating. In they'll do things like, I'm not really interested in. In other words, you are, but you realise you're not going to get it too quickly, and words like that, which I pick up on words sometimes, and the way in which things are phrased, and so stuff like that kind of fascinates me. Yeah, and for the record, yeah, I'm interested in partnership. If I could get it, it would be nice. It'd be nice if nothing else. It would allow me, for example, to broadcast HD, and you could then downsample, so you could have a smaller stream if you needed it. Because at the moment, of course, I can't. Well, I can stream in HD, but some of you wouldn't be able to watch. And of course, that wouldn't be really nice for you, and not for me either. Because the nice thing about it is really the interaction, and I think the creative streamers have a lot more interaction, I think, than a lot of the game streamers do. Because there's a lot more people asking about what we're doing, how we're doing it, and things like that. So yeah, and the other thing that happens with creative streamers sometimes is we forget to look at chat. Too busy talking, you see, and working at the same time. It certainly, yeah. Well, I hope it does. I mean, I was serious. I would really like to have seen chip carving. It's a really nice decorative art, and done right, as I'm sure you do it. It really looks good. Yeah. Everyone seems to be friendly and supportive. Yeah, it really is a nice community to be around. Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's I think of course you get the success of the big streamers on games, and I think that what that has a tendency to do is it's a tendency to make people think that all they need to do is just broadcast a game, and they'll have tens of thousands of people watching them, and then they see, the people like Dan's Gaming, for example, who it's a living. They make a living out of doing it, and you can watch. If you watch them for an evening, you see, for example, the number of donations that they get, and it's adds up to quite a bit of cash. And the good ones plough a reasonable amount of that back into the streams and things. So it's a business to them, but some of them like it. And I think you see a lot of newcomers who think that's going to happen to them overnight. Whereas with creative, I think for some reason, I don't know, I think a lot of the creative streamers, because they've taken time to learn the craft, shall we say that whatever it is they're doing, they kind of, I don't know, have an inherent understanding that it doesn't happen overnight, whatever it is. I'm being a little bit sort of overgeneralized, I guess, but and I think that just gives that's another reason why it's a little bit more friendly, because we kind of realise that you aren't going to suddenly become the next Dan's Gaming in 10 minutes flat or something like that. Right. I'm just seeing if I can just clean up some of these. I've got some rough wood cuts around here. I prefer a little bit more smooth than I've got, and so I'm just going to, unfortunately I'm now just taking the piece out of your view a little bit, but just trying to remove some little sort of stringy bits is the best way I can describe it, that are from previous cuts. Thank you, I think. Greer, it wasn't. I wasn't intending to be sort of 100% accurate to it. It was the style and pose. Because I've got a couple of others on my screen here that, well, I've got one at the moment, but when I started this, I had a couple of others on the screen as well. I was after the style, so something that looked like that. I wasn't after making an exact copy, and indeed there are quite a few differences. And of course, that's a painting. This isn't, and there are differences because of that. But that reference image is an illustration. It's an illustration for a book cover done by quite a well-known illustrator called Michael Wheland, and this illustration amongst a lot of others that he's done were done for an author called McCaffrey, who has a series of books about a world called Pern, where humans are, and there's a technological reason for them being there, and dragons are involved in helping the humans with a menace on the world. Michael Wheland used to be her favourite illustrator because, if you like, his impression that he obviously put down in these drawings matched what she had in her mind for the dragons, and therefore that's why he was a favourite. Other illustrators, shall we say, perhaps didn't do as good a job. But when I read the books, I see the dragons being like the illustration, and therefore I guess I have the same vision in my mind as Anne McCaffrey had. But because of that, because Michael's images look like I expect the dragons to look like, I just felt like I wanted to do something like that myself. So I feel like I'm copying his style more than I intended to actually copy the dragon as a whole. And his style, for example, does often show the dragons with the wings open like this. You'll notice I've left the dragon rider off. I had a little bit of sense. I could have had a little bit more sense. The dragon rider would have been too hard for me to do. I haven't yet developed that level of skill. But maybe in the future I might be good enough to put a dragon rider on. Now, don't usually, well, apart from this one specific instance, don't usually turn a chisel upside down like this, because it's really isn't a good way to try and cut, for a couple of reasons. One being is if you try and cut like this, you tend to actually dig into the wood. And you can't pull out, basically. You're stuck with digging in, so you've then got to stop and try a different angle. But in this one particular circumstance that I'm doing here, it actually works quite well, because it means I can hold the whole length of the chisel flat, and therefore I can feel high spots that are not in a similar height as I go across, and then I can just apply a little bit of pressure to smooth the area out. But generally speaking, you always use a chisel with a bevel against the surface that you want to remain. Which, generally speaking, isn't a problem with knives because they've got double bevels. Bevel on both sides, so you can use them either way around. You can actually get chisels like that as well. I've got a skew chisel that's got a bevel on both sides, but they're no good for this sort of smoothing. I could use it in the same way I'm using this as a knife, but because now if I'm holding it like this, the bevel is the only bit which is helping me judge what's flat. I can end up going up and down. Whereas if I hold it the other way straight, I can't do that. Certainly is one time when big chisels like this come in quite useful. I may actually have to get a knife out to do some of these little tiny areas in here, just because I can't really get a blade in too well. Now that I've turned it round, I've seen an area here that I didn't cut too well. So excuse me, if I end up doing it a lot from this angle, I'll just move the camera around so you've got a bit better of an idea what I'm doing. It's really, ideally when you're carving, you tend to move the piece around quite a lot. So you can get the correct angle with the wood. It's generally nicer to push the blade away from you, just because it's a lot easier to control like that. But and so you turn the wood around so that you can push. But there are times, and you'll have seen me do it even tonight, where I actually will use it towards myself, just because it's the easiest way to get in there. Now, working around these thumbs, I do have to be a little bit careful. They are, relatively speaking, fragile. Or even not so relatively speaking, to be honest. If I apply too much pressure in the wrong place, I can easily snap it off. And it doesn't have to be fantastically, as you might think, sort of real grunt. The chisels, all chisels are a wedge. Basically how they work. And as you drive it in, even if it goes in easily, it's of course pushing the two sides apart. So if I go in just a weak point and start just prising them apart, it doesn't take much, the stress will just crack things off. And I've had that happen, but not critically on this piece already. So I do try and take a little bit of care with it. Actually, I try and take a lot of care with it, but you know what I mean. Figure of speech in a way. I'm using a V-gouge, and it's a little tiny V-gouge, but it does get into these nice sharp corners quite well. and certainly I wouldn't be well, I don't have another tool that would do that just as well as they're doing. That's an area in there where I can't reach. I will have to use a knife. Okay, Gaia, that's not a problem. You, Gaia, you go if you want to go. Come back if you want to come back. That's quite all right. Thank you for stopping by anyway. Either way. Okay, I didn't actually realise you'd have a similar. I suppose it makes sense you'd have a similar issue with chip carving, but. I'm just in this area here, so I'm using a described as a detail knife. It's a detail knife because it's got a sharp point at the front, so you can get into small areas with detail. So I'm just using that to remove little slivers of wood just under here where I can't get a chisel in at the right angle, because chisels basically you have to use them more or less along their cutting length, by which I mean it's I suppose I could use a chisel like a knife if I can physically get it in, but with a knife you pull or you push along the edge. With a chisel it's a shaving action that you're using, or a cutting action, a straight sort of pressure cut. With the knives, because you're dragging, you've got a slightly different positioning for the tool. And like I'm getting in here now, which is I physically couldn't do with any of the chisels. I mean, even this one, if I was to try and use the corner like a knife, as you can see, there's a significant difference in the width at the point between the two. So I'm kind of actually just being a bit of a perfectionist here. But it's kind of like, so what? This isn't a commissioned piece, so this is a piece for me. So if I want to sort of take 30 hours to smooth everything off, I can take 30 hours to smooth everything off. When you're doing commissioned work, you kind of have to strike a balance, and it really depends on, or would depend on what the client wanted. Now then, I may actually need to use a chisel in that. Excuse me a second. I'm just trying to remove a little tiny bit of wood which is sort of just hanging loose, if you like, just under the neck. It's that sharp pointy angle thing that I mentioned earlier. I'm trying to get a piece of wood to let go. Hey, default guy, I don't know if you're still around, by the way, but something that just crossed my mind with your your chainmail jewellery there. You don't happen to have a stall at the Yorkshire Show, do you? Because I think I might go this year. And I do know that there's a craft hall there. And sometimes even a sharp knife like this won't get you in where you want to get. And I do not have a tool that will. Even the dental drills I don't think will get into that corner there. I mentioned dental drills, if anybody's wondering what on earth I mean. I do have some. What's the easiest way of describing it? They are, well, at least one of them really is a dental tool, but shall we describe them as a Dremel tool on steroids? One of them, which is actually called a micromotor, is rather similar to a Dremel, but just a lot more precise and higher quality. And the other one is an air-driven drill, and it actually is a dental equipment, which I can use for things like really high detail or just a different style of carving. Sometimes for something like this, if I've got an odd area, I will sometimes just use one of the dental drills to get in there, because a lot of them will drive straight down, which of course in a sort of a 1/8, what is it, 1.5, something like 1.5 millimeter width, 1.6 millimeter width drills, so you can get into some quite small areas, which can be really useful when you're just trying to clean up areas of a piece like that, or you just want to do some really fine details, because you can use the dental drills very much like using a pencil. It's a pencil that removes material really quickly, and you can't erase, but you sort of hold it and use it very much like that. I'm fiddling with details there. Okay. No, I've no idea either. I mean, I kind of suspect it'll be a little bit expensive, but it is kind of like one of the premier shows, especially for up north here. I know you aren't so far up north, but you know what. It's a 3-day show as well, by the way, Eddie, so that may affect the decision. I think it's next month as well, so I suspect it's booked up for this year, if you weren't already there. It's a little bit untidy around there. I dislike a little bit untidy. I don't mind tooling marks. What I hate is loose fibres of wood, which are just slightly attached or even just stuck in a corner. It's my personal, I don't know, OCD type thing. Trying to get rid of those. I don't have OCD, and I know it doesn't actually affect like that, but it's the easiest way of describing it sometimes. Let's see if we can tidy up this area now with the big chisel. As anybody new, by the way, to the stream and was wondering why I was asking Eddie if he'd have a stall at the Yorkshire Show. Yorkshire Show is a country show or a farming show in Yorkshire. I mentioned it's one of the biggest in a town called Harrogate. And the reason why I was asking Eddie is because Eddie actually has a business. And he does attend some shows selling his jewellery, which he makes, generally speak, jewellery and other associated items out of chainmail, or more accurately small tiny jump rings, because I think most people think of armour when you say chainmail. And that's, whilst Eddie would be quite happy to make you chainmail, and you probably couldn't afford it. So what type of finish? Generally speaking, I prefer not to finish them, Graia. I like the surface of the wood itself. This one's a bit but if I carve this correctly, then what I get is a really shiny surface, and if I were to sand it, for example, I'd lose that surface. And unless I do the whole thing fairly quickly in like a few hours, like spend the whole day doing the whole background, for example, it oxidizes at different rates, and you get sort of a different colour. And I just happen to just let it all oxidize generally. It has been requested that I consider, shall we say, on this one, either actually painting it, possibly with an airbrush, but possibly not. So yeah, maybe simplistic painting like sky blue, brown rocks, white dragon, but that has been suggested. And then of course that's a protective coat anyway, but it's also been suggested I do some pyrography on it, so that probably pyrographic wise would be limited to things like shadows and the rock. Be quite awkward actually trying to do pyrography on that rock texture. But otherwise, no, I haven't really thought about finishing it. The hard thing is finding a nice clear coat for the wood. It's a bit like the problem of finding a nice clear coat for airbrush painting. And of course you've got an added problem with clear coating wood, in that it soaks it up. The best kind of clear coats tend to be two-part clear coats, but the two-part clear coats, the catalyst is generally an arsenic based compound, which, as you might imagine, isn't necessarily a good thing to do unless you've got the proper equipment to handle it. The single part clear coats are a lot thinner, and generally speaking don't give as good a finish. I will say generally speaking, because there's always exceptions, but they're generally a lot thinner than the two-part epoxy based clear coats. But certainly Graia, if you've got any suggestions for a good clear coat, perhaps you've used some, I am always interested to hear. I can be persuaded one way or the other. Actually, one of the things I am kind of looking for is some kind of either clear coat, protector, something like that, varnish, which can be sprayed, or for the scraper board that I do, because being scraper board, you scrape it. So if it's not protected and you sort of hang it up somewhere, let's say, and it drops down, and it'll scratch really easily. So I am kind of looking for something that I can do to protect that, to stop it getting to stop them getting scratched. But again, yeah, finding decent clear coats is really hard. It's something which, as an airbrush artist, I've been kind of looking for a while. And the general consensus in the industry really is find a car workshop and ask them just to dust your piece whilst they're doing something else. And whilst they're doing something else is the important bit, otherwise they tend to charge you about 200 quid for something. But if they can just stick it in the booth while they're doing something else, then it can be somewhat cheaper. But good clear coating is like anything. It's a skill. There's a heck of a lot of skill in getting a decent clear coat on anything. I've got a slight dimple here that I'm just trying to ease out. You may see me using this chisel sideways. I'm using it more like a knife. The reason for that is it drives a lot easier. Used that way rather than straight shaving. And also the wood grain around here is a little bit interesting. If I try and drive it straight in some areas, it will actually roughen up the wood grain next to an area where it'll be nice and smooth. If I drive it like a knife, it sort of has a tendency to avoid that a little bit. It mitigates the effect. It doesn't remove it, but it does tend to make it less. The only thing I have to be really careful of in driving too far sideways is I can again create that undulation that I'm actually seeking to try and remove. So I've kind of got to make sure I do drive it sideways while still driving it forward, so it's kind of like a diagonal motion. There's another one, high spot just around there with a divot just to one side of it. You can feel it quite easily with your finger. I mean, I can feel that it kind of looks smooth, but when I run my fingers over it, I can feel high spot like there. I'll only go so far in trying to smooth them out. I can't physically do it without getting a completely different tool, like a router or a power plane out, or something that's height controlled anyway, so I can set a height and just run it everywhere. So potentially I could do it with a router. That would destroy the surface texture as such, but it would then be flat, and I'd potentially just have to sand it after that and put it with a dull background. Yeah, it is an option. It's one I'm not going to take, but it is an option. Okay. You can't. Yeah, password. That's what I'm using here. A satin finish polyurethane. Oh yeah, gel based, so it sits on the surface. That's an interesting idea actually. Some gel based stain. Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's basswood is great for carving, but it does have some interesting foibles. Satin finish polyurethane. Any particular manufacturer? Because generally speaking, that's the distinguishing factor. There are paints and there's paints. There's clear coats and there's clear coats, and it's generally you can get sort of two that ostensibly are the same thing but from different manufacturers, and one will be absolutely fantastic, the other one isn't worth the can it's put in. I mean, I can obviously test on I was about to say, I don't want to ruin a decent piece, which I hope this is a decent piece, but I can always, of course, test on another piece of wood. I don't actually have to do it for the first time on a worked piece. I'm doing something silly there, which is holding my hand in the way and not having real good control of the chisel. In fact, what that's saying to me is I could probably do with clamping that down. I'm working on a non-slip mat, so I don't need a lot of pressure on this clamp, which is why it's reasonably happy being just on one corner. It's really there just to apply a little bit of pressure to the to the piece on the non-slip, and the non-slip's doing most of the holding. The only thing is I've got to carve this towards me now. Let me move the camera. I am getting seriously in the way of this, aren't I? So if I do that, at least you'll get a slightly different perspective. Let's see if that needs a bit of focus. I think that's about focused. Now I can put my hands over here without getting in the way. So I have a tooling mark down here I need to get rid of. And we're about a couple of millimeters high as well in terms of this back plane around here. And the way I can tell I'm a couple of millimeters high, by the way, in case anybody is wondering, is I've got a line drawn right around the outside. Which I drew right at the start when I decided roughly how thick I wanted the back plane to be. And that helps set the rough cut depth when I started this, which is the rough cutting is kind of like drawing it out in blocks. So going from the top surface of the wood straight down along the edge of the wing, for example, no details on anything. And then once you've got that and the background established, you then work into that remaining wood to establish whatever image you're trying to achieve. Yeah, a lot of waste wood in there, and I need to persuade to come out gently. As others on the stream will have heard me say before, you don't pull any of this stuff out, you cut it out. If you pull it, you're quite likely to pull far more than you intended and end up with a big gash that you didn't want in the wood surface. And in some cases, if it was a fine edge, you could even pull off a whole section of wood. Now if I had and could actually use on this piece a carver's vise, it would be quite nice. Because a carver's vise will basically move the piece in 360 degrees. It's really like a vise fastened onto a plate fastened onto a ball joint, and you usually screw your work to the plate, and then you can spin it around and work from any angle, instead of like I'm doing here, leaning over to one side, trying to peer under the wing. I could actually move this so I could look straight down on it. It's a bit awkward on pieces like this because of the back plane is quite thin. I've probably got, what, 1/3 of an inch, something like that, and so that kind of needs quite small screws. And small screws don't hold as well as big screws. Maybe not so much of a problem when I'm using hand tools, but if I was to use a power tool, then things like that could be important. One of these days I'll get a carver's vise when I start doing some 3D work. Relief carving is generally easier for beginners, partly because you don't have to do all 3 sides. You only have to do sort of one-ish sort of side, but when you're doing 3D carving, you've a lot of other things to think about, like for example these wings. How thick would I do the wings? Will they support themselves if I make them too thin? Are they going to be easily knocked off, or do I need to do something about it? And you have a lot more decisions to make when you're 3D carving. Of course, it's all part of the challenge and all part of the interest in doing that type of carving. Now here's a case where if I'm not careful I could knock a major part of that off. But also equally in cutting down like that to cut it off, I don't want to cut through too far and create a tooling mark. So cut far enough, but don't cut too far. That's one of the interesting challenges. Generally speaking, like most other things, you develop the feel for it. so you kind of know how much pressure to apply. Okay, so let's see if I can get rid of this tooling mark. So I'm using this a bit like a knife, but I'm holding the blade down. That's what I'm doing with this finger here, so that it doesn't twist and I don't dig in. Do have to be a little tiny bit careful because these blades are sharp, so I could nick myself if I'm not careful, if my finger sort of got caught on something and I just pushed the blade into my finger pad. But I'm kind of not, I'm not there, I'm kind of just not quite on the blade, not quite off the blade, if you see. If I exaggerate, I'm up here rather than being like this, but there still is a minor danger that you've got to take care of. Ooh. It's getting a little bit warm here in the studio. 24 degrees. That's okay, Gryer. You know, it's I appreciate you guys chatting to me. It makes the whole stream a lot interesting for me, certainly, and for other people. So, you know, if you're doing something else, you're doing something else. You know, I don't mind. I'm not going to ban you if you don't answer or anything like that. Yes, please. My lovely wife has just offered to close the curtains for me, so I'm going to do these and then I put a big light on in here. Left hand one. Thank you. She doesn't like being heard on stream. I did play a joke on her at the start of this stream because she came into the room and started talking to me when I'd got the start frame up. But when the start frame's up, the mic's muted. But my darling didn't know that, and so she started talking to me, and I just said, "And there you go, guys, that's my wife." And she went all, she suddenly shut up and put a hand over her mouth and sort of went all shy, which is quite funny, really. Of course, the mic was muted, but I could say with all seriousness on my face, well, I'm definitely broadcasting. I just didn't have any sound on. It was quite funny because she was then looking at all the screens trying to work out whether I was actually broadcasting and whether there was any sound going out or not. I kind of wish I'd got the camera pointed that way, it would have been funny. Okay. I assume you mean people who are selling stuff that you don't want as opposed to legal people, Gryer. But there again, you may have meant that, and I hope you're not in a bad situation if that's the case. Okay, it's not ones I've heard of, but I'll have a see if there's if they are represented over here in the UK. Or Zinsa. It's not one I've heard of, but you never know. And the fact that you've sort of tried them on basswood, which is what we have here, is a useful thing, because as you gather, different woods will react differently as well. Now I have a little bit of a lump there, which I need to get rid of. I do tease her sometimes. does get nice presents though, like that bracelet. That's, as I mentioned earlier, this is one that I made for her. So she got a present. This was a present for her birthday, so along with another one, a gold looking chain and a necklace which was multicoloured. It's quite pretty. Okay, Rust-Oleum, yeah, I'm aware of those. We do have them around. It could end up being something similar in this country, but just named a different thing. Quite often get that international products get named different things in the UK. I am going to move that camera a little bit over there. Let's see if I can get it not to fall over and actually to point at me again. This is just a freestanding camera, but freestanding means it's free falling as well. There we go. Just move it a bit out of the way, otherwise I'll be knocking it over with the chisel. Okay, that's about the right depth. It wasn't until relatively recently, when I had some minor surgery, that I realised just how much you use your stomach muscles in doing this. It doesn't seem like it when I'm just sat here and I'm driving the chisel with my fingers. I am not using my arms at all to drive the chisel. It's just literally fingers. Then I've got a lot of control over it, and I'm not likely to damage myself. I might damage the piece by not concentrating on what I'm doing, because I've just scraped down the side of there. But I've just really sort of, even now I'm tensing my stomach muscles up to hold me still. And it's kind of surprising just which muscles you use sometimes when you're doing some activities like carving. I know the first few days when I did airbrushing, because generally speaking, I'll stand up when I airbrush, and I have a tendency to lean forward. It doesn't have to make your back ache. You kind of wonder afterwards, how did I get backache from airbrushing? It's just the posture that you hold. Still got a bit of a tooling mark. I occasionally have fun when they come here. I've had a few, because we've got a few providers in the UK. My employer provides actually both internet lines I've got for me, and the telephone line, and the number of times in the past, before I stopped answering the door because I get fed up with it, you get them coming around, and The first pitch is, we can give you your internet cheaper than your current supplier. No, you can't. And we can give you your telephone cheaper as well. No, you can't. And of course the argument then is, yes you can, yes we can. So okay, so how much are you going to pay me to take it from you? Oh no, we charge you. Well, I don't get charged at the moment, so how are you making it cheaper? At which point they usually go away. But to be honest, I've kind of we're actually now in a neighbourhood watch area, so they don't actually come around now. Because if we get too many cold callers around like that, the neighbourhood watch calls the local police, and they come and basically tell them to go elsewhere. Actually, most of our nuisance these days is telephone calls, unsolicited telephone calls, and of course in the UK you're supposed to have the ability to say I don't want to receive them. It's something called a telephone preference list. But a lot of organisations, shall we say, use international call centres, and therefore there is, whilst it is in principle still illegal for them to do so, it's the actual the powers that be that would find them can only fine the callers in the UK, and it's not the company that they're calling on behalf of, it's the company themselves, because they're supposed to check whether you're on the list or not. And a lot of times they just random call anyway. We used to get about 5 or 6 a day, anything from about 8 o'clock in the morning through till about 10 o'clock at night. I say used to, in actual fact we still do, but we don't hear them anymore because we've got one of these BT telephones that answers, if it doesn't recognise the number, answers it and says, who are you? And then we'll see if they want to talk to you, basically. And most of the time these places are using auto dialers, and it just hangs up at that point, so we never hear the phone ring. And of course the ones that have a real human voice and actually say who they are, we just say we're not interested anyway, and we don't even have to talk to them. We just tell the phone we're not interested, and it says please leave a message, and of course they never do. So the telephone, a horrible invention and a wonderful invention all at the same time. Yeah, that's basically how our phones work here. Only it's kind of the other way. It's a whitelist rather than a blacklist. So it whitelists people who you allow to come straight through. You can blacklist numbers who basically say go away, and it doesn't even take an answering machine message, I don't think. Or there's just the grey area where it says we'll see if you tell us who you are, we'll see if they want to talk to you. Yeah. Well, this one's actually built. Well, the DECT, the wireless phone, so it's built into the base station. But I guess yours is one that sort of plugs into the main line, and then your phones plug into the back of it. Great devices. I highly recommend either the standalone one like you potentially have there, Graya, or the integrated BT one. I'm sure some other suppliers do it as well, but that's the only one that I'm aware of. That almost did a little bit make me jump. Jowie14, thank you very much for following the studio. I do appreciate everybody who does that. Thank you very much. Eddie Folgart, you're off for the night. Okay, good night. It's just 10 o'clock at night, isn't it? Good night, Eddie. Have a good evening, and I may get a chance to see you on tomorrow afternoon stream. Usual thing, I'll be lurking though if I do. I'm trying to just remove a sliver of wood from underneath there. Yeah, that's the sort of thing. Grey. Wonderful devices. I've still taken a fair chunk of material away and I've still got that tooling mark. It's really surprising how deep sometimes these, when you just cut straight down, it kind of, even if you don't put too much pressure on, sometimes you can get a mark, and I've got a mark here, but this was done when I was doing, top to bottom carving. I'm just surprised it's still there. I don't want to go much further down in depth. So ultimately it may just have to stay. Fortunately, these sorts of things, these sorts of tooling marks have a tendency to sort of just slightly stand out a little bit. And here it whilst it is a slight dip, it's more just like a white area of a white line on the wood. I think I'm actually quite close to it going away. Let's come backwards a little bit. There we go. Right, almost got that. We've now just got a little bit of a raised area just at the back underneath the wing area, because I wasn't quite holding the chisel flat. I've got a bump there. Got another bump there. That chisel's rounded off a little bit. Let me just give this a bit of a sharpen. Just when I was cleaning it off then, I felt a slight burr on the back, and that often happens as you're doing it because the edge is so fine. It tends to curl up a little bit, and that's when it starts to feel more blunt. So just a minor sharpen there. It may well be. Just enough. try it without the handle. No, I'm trying too hard. Ah dear, I'm trying too hard. And the piece is at the wrong angle to do it properly. And I'm getting a little bit warm in here, as you can see. So what I'm going to do is I am going to say that's enough for tonight before I make a mess. We've got about as far as I expected, I think, tonight. Let's just give this a bit of a tap off. And let me raise the camera up. And I can give you a view of it. So we've done quite well. I've done a lot of work in this area, lowering this down, which is what I want it to do. It's now roughly level with the rest. There's a slight bump in there, but I ain't that bothered about that. Done a lot of work just underneath the head, tidying up a lot of area around here. And I started more or less doing the tidying up work around here, getting rid of the tooling mark that I was didn't want to be there, and it is now all but vanished, or certainly enough not to be visible. So I've got to make sure this area just flattens off a little bit. There's a few bumps in there that I want to dispose of, but essentially that area is now all bar a sort of final few tidy ups complete. I've got the right sort of thickness around here, but it does need flattening. And then tomorrow actually we're going to now work on all the tooling marks around this area here. Generally speaking, most of this background area here is right. This knot area, which I know is going to be a little bit of a pig to do because the knots are kind of a bit like plasticky. They take a little bit more effort to do. So that's standing a bit thick. Not too bad, but it needs shaving off. So that's tomorrow night around this area and that knot. And then we are after that, I think probably, so that's Tuesday, possibly on Wednesday night it'll be a case of looking at the whole piece and saying, you know, are there any small areas that need a tidy up? But essentially I think on Wednesday it will be finished, or I'll call it finished, to the best of my level of skill. Okay, fair enough, Fady. I'll have to do some work then. Ah well, never mind. Make a change. Do I use stropping of your blades? It is stropping, but rather than doing it on a loose leather strop, Graya, I'm using a leather strop on a board. And it's got profiles if I need them for some of the gouges, for example. So generally speaking, it's stropping with a polishing compound. I don't need to use a stone on any of these blades, nor the knives either. I've been using I've not done a lot of carving over the last 3 years, but I've been using these for 3 years. I don't need a stone on them at all. I do have I think I have something like a 6,000 or 8,000 stone, but there literally is no need to use it. In fact, I'd probably destroy the blades more trying to use it than this. It's really just a few passes backwards, as I was doing with this one. It's just a few backward passes, holding it with the bevel level, and then turn it over and just straighten out the edge, which is when you normally use a strop for. But that's it, and that's all that's needed to make a significant difference to that. Yeah, that's all it is. Yeah, I use a yellow. Well, it's a yellow grade. I have no idea what the grade is. It's provided with the strop and suggested for use with these tools. and I'm sure I'm paying a bit more extra for it because it's got the manufacturer's mark on it. But you know what? I've had that 3 years as well, and if you look at the profile, you can see how much is used. And I'm not skinned with it, if you know what I mean. It's like rubbing a crayon on, and I use a fair bit of it, and it works. In fact, I probably could do with a new strop. In fact, I think I've got one around somewhere, because this one is now reasonably well loaded with metal. But the profiles are great for doing the insides of the, especially these little tiny ones. You know, you strop the outsides, but then you have to get inside the profile, and these little tiny things are really nice for doing that. Couldn't do it without them. So that's that. That was a few quid, a few pounds, a few dollars, whatever. But that in itself was well worth it. Anyway, I'm packing up for this evening before I make a mess of this, and I've got a bit of compound on that, so let's just brush that away, because I know it stains the wood if it gets pressed on. Okay, so whilst I am putting chisels away, and if there's anybody who's interested in carving, always put your tools away. Always keep them in something like this. Don't throw them into a bag or anything where they can knock against each other. That's the fastest way to blunt your tools. If you look after them, they don't have to stay sharp for a long time. Although I would say, when you're putting them in a bag like this, do be careful. I've never yet cut myself carving. I have caught myself and drawn small amount of blood putting chisels in this bag. So I'll just be doing something like that, and I'll just catch the edge of one of these chisels. In fact, it's usually this one. These edges are extremely sharp, and you just nick yourself. I've got a slight mark, you can't see it, but there's a good slight mark there from when I did it last week. But well worth investing in proper cases to keep your chisels sharp. The big one goes in its own case. I do have a big tool roll, but it's a bit overkill because there's only 2 tools in it, and this will be one of them. So I just keep this in its plastic packaging for the moment till I can afford some more chisels that are useful to me. Anyway, whilst I'm packing up, it is a well-used strop, yes. Mainly because you're using it about every 10 minutes, often when you're carving. So it does load up. But having said which, that's 3 years worth of, not daily carving, but 3 years worth of carving. So whilst I am packing up and trying to find my thing, of course, if there's anybody who's watching, I do of course encourage you to follow me, like some of the excellent people who have already done so this evening. Like was it Joey14 who was the last, and thank you again both to him and to everybody else who has followed tonight. Graya and some people earlier this afternoon as well, when I wasn't even streaming. Amazing that. But if you don't want to follow me, that's quite alright. Or if you do follow me and don't want to follow me, or do want to follow me and don't believe Twitch will notify you, you can follow me on Twitter. Details will be on the end plate. They're on the below the stream window as well, but it's at Zaragonart. I tweet when I go live, not when I make a sandwich. So there you go. Useful tweets as opposed to noise. On the other hand, if you just would like to try and catch me the next time I go live, it will be tomorrow night. I start around about 2000 hours in the UK, 1900 hours GMT, or if you can't be bothered asking Google what time that is in your own local time zone, take a look at the clock. Yeah, you've probably got one at the bottom right hand corner of your computer screen. Mine says 10:15. Subtract 2.5 hours, and that is 8 PM in the UK. So that time tomorrow should be when you'll see me again, and in fact roughly that time each night, 7 nights a week at the moment, unless they get bored. but you guys are interesting to talk to, so that ain't going to happen for a while at least. I'm not going to take my glasses. I was about to take my glasses off, but if I do that, I can't see you. Yeah, I can see through the... Yeah, not getting into that. So, have a good night, everybody. Thank you very much. It's been great fun having you around. Thank you for those of you that have joined in the chat. Thank you that's been lurking. See you tomorrow.